I hit a wall with how much work I was doing constantly and with how not fulfilling that any of that was. I'm never going to work in the game industry again, and I don't even know if I want anything to do with games. It's getting easier for people to cheat, fake homework with AI. We're asking really big questions about what any work that we do even means in the AI age. Generally, when we talk about burnout in the game industry, it's your boss working you too hard. I totally did this to myself with trying to work full time and make the indie game thing happen as a business, centering my life way too much on my career. I really think that the answer to all of these questions is making your in-class time as valuable as possible. I'm going to be making my career out of convincing professors to try the active learning principles. There are just so many things that I was realizing simultaneously. I didn't want to be a full-time programmer. I don't want all my income to revolve around the monetary success of the art that I'm making.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another insightful and fun episode of 1000 Gurus with me, your host, J.R. Yonocruz. Today's guest is Travis Linden Reid, who was guest number 6 on season 1 of the show over a year ago. It was nice to have him back on the show with a fresh new name. We get into that story in the beginning, but this was such a peak episode. It's always such a pleasure to chat and connect with Travis. I'm starting to see that teachers are some of my favorite guests on the show, as they tend to be the most eloquent and reflective people, which is obviously par for the course as a teacher, distilling what you know to other people. For Travis, he's so knowledgeable about the insights that he's learned, and it's always nice to have him back on. We chat about what his last year has been like teaching game development classes at UCI, how he's recovered from burnout by shifting his career away from video games, and the process of running his indie game studio that's currently building a boy band stalker sim, as he calls it. It was a fascinating conversation to have and to re-listen to, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So without further ado, hope you enjoy this conversation with Travis Linden Reid. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1000 Gurus. Please welcome my guest, Travis.
Hey, really happy to be back. I'm excited to chat again.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, so just to get out of the way, Travis, formerly known as Linden, you were on season 1, episode number 6, I believe. And yeah, you went by Linden then. Oh, sorry, just more context, we recorded that on August 28th, 2024 last year, published on November 11th. So yeah, your name change. Would you like to go into how that occurred?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So for viewers who may be new, I'm a trans man. And when I originally picked my name, this was like years and years ago. When I picked Linden, I picked something intentionally like androgynous because I wasn't sure where my identity was going to end up. And so for the last few years, I've actually been putting off my legal name change until just now because I knew that I wanted to figure out something else. And so Travis was something that I just really liked the vibe of it. It is very obviously, I think, masculine. So if I'm walking into a space where I don't know what the vibe is, or I don't know if we're sharing pronouns or whatever, I think that kind of immediately tells people what my pronouns were if they weren't sure. It also just sounds like Travers, which I think is cool because it sounds like a journey or a change. So yeah, I really like it. Linden is still my middle name, so it's not like a taboo. It's not like a dead name or anything like that. It's still my middle name, and it still has a very special place in my heart. But Travis is my first name now. Yeah.
Nice. So was that also for the legal process of changing your name to Travis,
Uh-huh.
did you also change your middle name to Linden?
Yes.
Okay,
Yay.
gotcha.
Yeah. So my full name is Travis Linden Alexander Reid because I
Wow.
also couldn't let go. I also really like Alexander. I knew
Yeah,
that was always going to be my middle name, but then I was like, well, I don't want to get rid of Alexander or Linden. So
yeah.
now I just have 2 middle names. Yeah.
Nice. You are Latino or Filipino, or one of those people who have like multiple middle names. I don't know if you know this, but like Filipinos, like they traditionally have like 5 names, or like a
Uh-huh.
2-part first name and then 2 middle names and then maybe a hyphenated
Uh-huh.
last name. So it's like you have a series of 6 names and you're like, geez. And so I
Yeah.
know that's like a Latino thing as well. That's a Filipino thing. I'm
Uh-huh.
sure other cultures have that too. So now you are Filipino or Latino, I guess.
Awesome. I'm in
Besi-
a club, cool people
yeah.
with lots of names. Yeah.
Yeah. So wait, Alexander was your middle name before as well?
Yeah, Alexander is the masculinization of one of my old names.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I always really liked it. So I didn't want it to be something that people were calling me, but I also didn't want to totally let go of it because it's
Mm,
an awesome name. I
yeah,
really like it. So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Well,
yeah.
now you are officially the second Travis I've had on the show.
Nice.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
first Travis is also a very masculine dude. He works out all the time. We talked about fitness. We talked about anime. So yeah, he's stereotypically masculine. So yeah, I think you fit in the club. It is a very dude name. Sweet. I like it. All right. So I know in the last show we talked about you. This was right before you started being professor at UCI. And so I just wanted
Uh-huh.
to close the loop on that, right? So how, just in general, this will be our first topic technically, but how did that go? I guess generally, okay, jumping off point. So how was it like?
Yeah, it's the coolest thing that I've ever done. I love teaching so much. Yeah, this is so I think yeah, last when we talked about it, it was like a few weeks before, maybe about a month before I actually started teaching my first class. So now I have my first full year under my belt. And I've started teaching like I'm teaching the same classes again this year, and we're like 4 weeks in. Yeah, it's fantastic. I love teaching. It's first of all, I mean, the bar was low, but way better than programming full time. I actually do code a lot for my class because I create coding assignments. So I have to code them before the students code them and then break them down, write all the questions, instructions, and such. But the face to face time and like feeling like I'm doing something really important because I'm a huge part of somebody's college education. It's fantastic. It's so much more satisfying being a programmer.
I like it. Okay, so now my logistical brain is churning. So how many classes do you teach? How long are the classes? And I think quarter system, right? So 10-week classes. And
Yeah.
so how many classes per quarter you've taught for 3, 4 quarters now or something like that? I don't know. Can you walk me through all that?
Yeah, I'm in my like fourth quarter basically because we've got the quarter system, which to my knowledge is like UC specific. I've never seen another school, maybe like Stanford or something. I don't
Right.
know. We don't do this in Texas,
Yeah.
where I'm from. But yeah, the quarters we've got 3 regular quarters a year, and I teach 1 class a quarter right now. And I actually also just accepted an offer to start teaching at Fullerton College,
Uh,
which is a community college. So I'll be teaching either 1 or 2 classes a semester starting next semester, but right now I'm just teaching 1 a quarter. Yeah, I'm teaching a sequence of introductory game programming classes.
okay. So when someone
Yeah.
signs up for your class, so you've completed 3 quarters so far.
Yeah.
So when someone signs up for your class, like what is the it's been so long since I was at UCI, but what is the structure like? It's like one lecture per week, and then is there what's it called? The smaller class things? I don't remember. How does that work?
Yeah, so we have most of the classes at UCI, I think they're usually like 2 lectures a week, maybe 3, and then some of them have labs or discussions on top,
Right,
which I
right.
think is the
Discussions.
extra thing that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
My classes, because I used to be commuting from LA, I actually live in OC now, but because I was commuting from LA, I set them up so that they're once a week, 3-hour long courses in the evening on a weekday evening.
Okay.
So that's a little bit non-standard, but I'm continuing with it because we do programming activities in class. And so that gives people plenty of time to, we have a little bit of lecture and then a lot of discussions and coding. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 3 hours once
Hmm.
a week in the evenings.
Yeah.
Do you have like discussions or labs or something like that outside of that?
No, I would love to have labs.
Okay.
I think that every single introductory programming class should have labs, but this class wasn't set up with them when I joined it. And so I make students bring a laptop to class and we code in class. I just turned it into a lab. I actually went to a like boot camp for professors over the summer at UCI called the Active Learning Institute. And so I follow active learning principles where we do our passive learning, like watching videos, reading stuff outside of class. And we do all of our active learning, our projects and stuff during class time.
I see. I like that.
Yeah.
So, how do you feel like it's different in experience wise for your students?
Yeah, it's super, super different. I follow, again, that like doing the active learning stuff in class and the passive learning outside. We call that like a flipped class structure. So it's totally different than your standard college class where you go in and the professor just talks at you for an hour, hour and a half, and then you do all of your active learning. So, like, you're practicing with your homeworks and you're studying and stuff, like, outside of class. We totally flip that. Well, I do also make you code outside of class. So you do active and passive learning outside of class. we do as little passive learning inside of class as possible. So I talk like as little as possible. And it's a lot of even then back and forth with the students, asking questions, having students present things, having them answer questions, stuff like that. So very different than a very typical college class. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like I don't know what other courses or similar courses do, but have you gotten good
Mhm.
feedback from students on do they enjoy this sort of method and does it work more for them or they learn better?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the reason that I'm so into it is because the research that we read for the Active Learning Institute really supported this, including for STEM classes, including for introductory level STEM classes like mine, like a beginner programming class. And really, a lot of the feedback that I got from last year, I was doing more lecturing, but still had in class activities. And the students, a lot of their feedback was just, I want to do more of these activities. I feel like I learn the most through these activities. I want more time for them. And so part of why I did the institute was to like learn exactly how to do that. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, I think it has really good outcomes.
Yeah, I can imagine having not taken the class but when you explain that structure, it makes a lot of sense to me inherently because, yeah, we'll do passive learning by ourselves outside. Then maybe we have questions. And then when we actually do active learning, that's where they can now leverage you as the teacher to
Yeah,
ask questions and to do these things. And you can walk them through or hold their hands on those sort of things. And I feel like fundamentally, it's such a better learning experience because now you're actually getting more out of that 3 hours you're spending in class rather than just zoning out and
yeah.
yeah,
No, exactly. As somebody with ADHD, I can't walk into that classroom and be like, "You have to pay attention to me for the next hour and a half," because I don't do that. I literally can't do that. I try to not ever ask my students to do something that, like, I couldn't even do.
makes sense.
That seems unfair to me. And so, also, you mentioned the in-class time they get to leverage me. I also have learning assistants who are upperclassmen in the same program who took these classes previously, who they're basically taking a different class for credit that's a teaching class, like a class that teaches them how to teach.
Uh,
And then they come into my class and they facilitate the activities, they facilitate the discussions, they facilitate the programming, like they help the students while they're programming. And so they have me, they have the TA, and they have all of these learning assistants or LAs for short, helping
uh,
them out during the activities. And they have each other.
yeah.
So
It's more
yeah,
of like a conducive learning environment with everyone
mhm,
actively learning.
yeah, absolutely. And it's a very safe place to fail too, which is great because programming is very stressful when you're new to it. And so the activities I grade based solely on participation. The homeworks, we actually like grade based on completion and accuracy, but the in-class activities, if you can get through all of it, the stakes are lower and you have all that support there. So you have all that time to like practice doing things and have a good fail safe so that when you go to do the homework, you've probably got a pretty good grasp of it because you had that practice time in class.
I like that. Okay,
Yeah.
so it sounds like a fun experience and you found a method that works for you and works well for the students. Were there some things I'm curious that you expected, but then also on the flip side, some things that you didn't expect that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah. I think the unexpected things are all the result of trying something that somebody hasn't tried before. As a student, I never got to experience this in any of my programming classes. So when I am running a programming class and I'm like, we're going to do a discussion activity now, I'm like, I'm going to find out with you guys how that goes and how effective it is. And I have to take that leap of faith with my students because I never got to, like, experience that as a student myself and see whether or not, like, what worked or what didn't. The thing that's been unexpected to me is actually how well discussion activities are going and how helpful that they are to students. And the fact that I was even able to come up with discussion questions that made sense. Because when I was going through the institute, and then also when I did a consultation and had some emails back and forth with the person running the institute so that I could come up with the best like class material and structure possible, something that I was getting stuck on was like, how do I come up with having students discuss material that's technical when they're complete beginners? And because even a lot of the examples that we got in the institute were for like mid-level or like senior students in a topic where it's okay, you've learned about all the little details of how these systems work and you've practiced building them. So now let's discuss how we would build a system. But somebody who's just learning coding for the first time, they can't design the whole system. Think about it like you're teaching somebody like carpentry and you just taught them how to use a hammer and a nail. And now you're like, design a bench, right? So, what are the in between questions that we can ask to get them building up to that stage, right? And the thing that I've found the most surprising is that there even are like beginner discussion questions that we can come up with and like that the students are actually like very brave in tackling even difficult things that I do throw at them. Sometimes I do a little like evil cackle in class and I'm like, you're all going to be terrified by this, but I want you to try it anyways. I've been very pleasantly surprised in their bravery at attempting it, even
Nice.
when I do throw them a little bit like more difficult question. Yeah.
Uh, you
Yeah.
like you enjoy that when you throw down the gauntlet. They're like, all right,
Yeah.
let's go, let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess really, yeah, my answer is really, I'm very pleasantly surprised with how brave they are at tackling this very unconventional class structure. Yeah, and
Mm.
meeting the demands of it.
I
Yeah.
would imagine too, and maybe I'm just supposing this, but this seems like a class someone wants to take because maybe they want to go into it as a career, right? As opposed to those classes where it's okay, this is a GE, I have to take this
Yeah.
prerequisite or whatever. So I imagine the motivation going in is a little bit different. And you're like, look, I've done this, I do this, I can walk you through this. And so for me, I feel like I'd be more excited anyways. So that makes a lot of sense.
Wait, but that's the catch because my students, their major that absolutely applies to. But my classes, their sequence of 3 technical classes that they have to take that they never take technical classes again in this
Oh,
major.
I see.
They don't have to take any programming classes again unless they are like double majoring or minoring in something like computer science related. My students, they don't have to take technical classes in this major ever again. So
Mm,
most of them are actively dreading my class.
I see.
They're very passionate about the idea of being able to build games and even doing the coding sometimes like independently, but they are very, very nervous about it. And so this was actually a big discussion that I had when I was doing the consultations to design the best class structure possible. It's like really making sure to sell the buy-in because, and I think even professors that don't have that big of an issue that the students do bring that passion, I do have a buy-in challenge for the class. And
Mm,
so I do still have to sell and justify to the students why these skills matter to make sure that we actually facilitate them bringing that passion to the table.
okay. So
Yeah.
then what if so you're saying that for this major, they don't necessarily need to learn technical skills, but your class is very technical.
Yeah, well, they do have to for the major, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their title after they graduate will be programmer.
Okay,
And I'm a programmer who's teaching them programming skills, but they may go on to be a designer who never writes code or a
I see.
produce designers who decide what the game systems are, but don't actually write the computer code themselves. Or they may
Mm,
go on to be a producer who figures out scheduling and dependencies and all of the things that make games be delivered on time, but again, they don't write code.
I see, I see.
So,
What is that major
yeah.
then that your students normally are? What's it called?
Yeah. It's the GDIM major, so it's game design and interactive media.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So
Mhm.
then if there are students who want to be like a coder or develop games like what you're teaching, would they take another major? Or I'm trying to connect the dots there. Because I feel like if people want to do what you do, your class is extremely valuable, right? But if you're saying that this general major, they might not necessarily be in a technical role, which is cool. But then what about the people who are like, no, I actually do want to do this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, I talk to students like that a lot, and I always advise them to either double major in computer science or minor in I think the minor at UCI is information and computer science.
Okay,
So that way they get those software engineering fundamentals on top of the game design skills
right.
that'll be really important to be really strong programmers in the field.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so important. So let's say you go into video game design or something that's not technical, but then you take this class or like you said, get a minor or double major, something like that. I think if the goal is to get a job, right? I think that'll only help you. But I can understand the hesitancy of, oh no, I'm kind of scared of the technical side of it because I don't really want to do that. But
Yeah.
But then I talk to students all the time as well, and the common fear is I want to get a job, obviously, and I want to be productive and pay off the loans and have a good career. And I think going as their comfort zone and standing out by having, let's say, a double major in something technical and then general like video game design, I feel like that would be helpful. And I feel
Hmm.
like maybe people would see that, the value in that, but you're still saying you still kind of have to give people buy-in to take your class.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what I mean by the buy in aspect is I do think that our classes are valuable for somebody, even if they don't want to do the computer science like route.
Yeah.
Like, even if they don't want to be programmers, if they're like, I really want to be specifically a game designer or producer or some other role, I don't want to have to code full time. The technical fundamentals that you learn in my class are still super, super valuable. So, first of all, the rest of your major you're gonna be making video games, so if you're the person on your team who brings some kind of coding skills, that makes you really valuable on your team. Or if you're doing something solo as a designer, or you just don't wanna wait to have to get a super skilled programmer on your team, having some of those programming skills down is huge. Also, the rest of your major and in the field, if you are a designer, producer, an artist, and anything in the game industry who has a little bit of technical literacy, you will be very well liked on your
Mm,
team. That's like, no matter your role, all the tools that we learn in class, even if you never write a single line of code again, you will use those tools again. So, for example, a game engine is something that we learn in class, and that's the program where all the art, the sound, the code, the design all comes together. Most of the people on the team touch it at some point. If you have on your resume that you know how to use an engine, or if you're in your job and you're somebody that has that like competency, that's huge. Yeah, useful for everybody, even if you don't code again. Yeah.
totally. As again, as someone who also works in tech, and even if you're not on the technical side of it, if you're not a developer
Yeah.
on our team, even if you're on any other side of it, having the technical skills or familiarity with the tools, like you said, super
Yeah.
invaluable, especially if your goal is to be liked by your employer, by your team, and
Uh,
everything like that, and just general beefing up your resume and being a valuable candidate. The next question I had is, what aspects do you enjoy most about being a professor, and any aspects that you like the least?
yeah. My favorite, sorry, I'm laughing trying to think about what I would say is the thing that I like the least.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about it is like any moment that I get where I've been guiding a student through something and the gears turn in their brain and something finally clicks for them and they can demonstrate to me that they've learned something. Magic.
Mm,
Amazing.
yeah.
Best feeling in the world. Like, that's my job to make those moments happen, which is perfect because that's exactly what I'm chasing. That's just like the best feeling ever.
The next question I'll kind of tee it up is general advice to students and then general advice to other professors.
Cool. Okay.
You just love everything about it. There's nothing you like the least, huh?
No, I have to come up with a diplomatic answer.
Okay, yeah, that's what I suspected. How do I say this the right way?
Okay. I have a diplomatic answer. The only thing that I don't like about it is the thing that I'm struggling with right now in my career is making it full time, where my full time job can just be
I
teaching.
see.
That's just what I'm figuring out how to do because one class a quarter as an adjunct, that's not full time. That's like 33% time, I
Mm,
think. And so there's a few different routes that I'm looking at. And I don't currently, as of speaking, feel the spark to do research. Most professors at a university, and to my knowledge, any tenure track ones also do research. They get a PhD. The PhD leads you on a research path. It teaches you how to research. It's not about learning how to teach. And that is a major part of their contribution to the university. I really want to focus on teaching, at least right now, at this point in my life. So the difficult thing for me is figuring out how to make it full time because full time adjunct positions, which is a professor who's not doing research, are hard to come by. I just want to teach. I
yeah,
don't wanna I'm done
I
with
feel that.
strategizing or whatever. Somebody just let me teach full time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, I know that's the process you're trying to figure out. What are some of the possible ways that you can transition to more of a full time? I don't know if you've probably done research on how other professors are set up or how they got there, but what does that path look like to make that a reality?
Yeah, I don't really have this quite figured out yet. It's a little bit just on a department having a full-time role
Like opportunities
open.
open. Okay.
Yeah, because really it's the teaching world, it's not quite the same way in, like, industry where it's just about moving up, like, just because you're good at your job or whatever. There has to be a role, there has to be a need, right? There have to be classes that are, like, a full-time amount of classes open at a department that they're like, "It makes sense for us to have an adjunct fill this role," because the people who are researching also have responsibilities for taking on a certain number of classes at different points in their career. Another route would be, like, teaching community college full time, so that's also something that I'm exploring with picking up the job at Fullerton College, which I'm super, super excited about because 'cause I'm gonna be teaching video game programming classes there too.
Uh,
And community colleges, you don't have the PhD or requirement. They like to see a master's, but, they wanna see basically just some demonstration of knowledge and then the passion for teaching. So those are sort of the 2 options that I have are going for a tenure track role at a community college or going for like a full-time adjunct role at a university. And it's still again, it really just depends on there has to be a department that has that, like
okay.
those that need open for a full-time adjunct in this particular like niche.
Oh, I see. So it's
I
like
think it's gonna
supply
be
and
a little bit of
demand.
time.
Oh,
Yeah, time
I
and
see.
luck. Yeah.
So is it again, I don't know how like the professor career track is like, but so you can teach at universities and also community colleges, but you're saying that a full time would have to be either or am I misunderstanding?
Yeah, well, I mean, I wouldn't if I had a full-time job in one place, I wouldn't also teach classes elsewhere just because I wouldn't have time.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's like
Yeah,
you can technically do all these like part-time teaching positions at
yeah,
different colleges or different universities,
yeah,
but it's more just like you can fill it up with a full-time role at one spot or multiple other
yeah.
spots.
Yeah, and I am also doing something a little bit strange in trying to do this because adjunct, like most of the other adjuncts that I've met at universities, they have another job that they work full time and
Uh,
they just teach maybe one class like a year at a university, either for extra money or just because they love teaching or whatever, but they're not trying to make it their full time job. So,
I see.
yeah, I'm doing something a little unusual, which is why it's hard.
That's interesting because I asked selfishly because one of my dream careers is to be a professor, but
Yeah, yeah,
I do like the idea of doing it part-time because that's what I do want to do. Like I'm not trying
yeah,
to have a full-time job. Like by this point in time, I would have made it so well that I would just do this for fun because I
yeah,
enjoy teaching. And so I feel like, okay, that makes sense then. Like it's giving me like a possibility of, okay, I could be an adjunct professor or however that manifests and do it
yeah.
part-time. And it seems like other people do that as well.
Yeah, do you want some advice about it?
Oh,
Like,
I mean, yeah,
about, like, how you would
that's why I'm here and that's why I'm talking to
Yeah,
you.
perfect. Good,
Yeah.
good. Well, yeah, I mean, I like giving people advice, like, that's why I'm a teacher now. So, the first aspect that, like okay, this is also just, like, from my understanding of how people get these jobs, having some kind of like, having the big professional experience background, that's a huge part of it. I worked in the game industry for 10 years or something as a programmer, and so I had that under my belt because they do want to see that professional experience. The other thing I think is just demonstrating some kind of interest or commitment to teaching or mentorship on top of the career that you're having. And also through that, you can like build connections that like lead to those jobs, right? So, for example, my whole career, I did a lot of different various mentorship and one of those roles was mentoring for the capstone class. So the like final class for seniors in the program that I'm now a professor in. Not a coincidence at all. I think we talked about this actually last time you
Yeah, we
interviewed
did
me.
a little bit.
That mentorship role essentially led to the job that I have now because it gave me the connections and clearly already dedication to their program that like led me to getting the role that I have now. And then also I had done a little bit of guest lecturing already. So if you have friends that are professors, just offer to help their class anyway.
Uh,
But tell them like if you need a mentor, if you need a guest speaker or whatever, then telling them that you're available for that or reaching out to community colleges and or serving on an advisory board for a curriculum department or something like that. Those kinds of things can show that you're also interested in mentorship and education outside of just your career. So I
right.
think that also definitely helped me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, thank you for that. There's a lot of
Yeah.
the last interview and this one is great because it's a good reference point of what are the opportunities you can to start laying the foundation to going in that direction. So it's very helpful.
Yeah.
My next question is, well, to tie this section up is advice to students taking your courses, and
Yeah.
then possibly advice to other professors on what you've learned
Yeah.
and what could help them?
Yeah. My advice for my students taking my courses is you can take all of the large amount of advice that I already give you at face value. So the class participation is just absolutely everything. If you're doing anything in your classes that's not just like the professor talking at you, like lecturing, it's because there is a ton of effort put into making that class experience really worth it. And so whatever you need to make like your class experience worth it, come to class and then definitely give me that feedback. Tell me about what you're interested in doing in class, what kind of exercises are and aren't helping you. Ask for help, but also ask for what you need. Come to office hours, both mine and the TAs, come to the LAs. We also have tech support hours on Discord outside of class. Utilize every single resource that we have because I don't want you to be like sitting there doing your homework by yourself, just like I don't even know what to do. All the resources that I give, all of the pre-learning, the lecture slides, the examples, the tutorials and stuff, like they're really there to be designed exactly to make you successful in the homework. So utilize all those resources and then tell me what's working for you and what's not working for you because I want to hear it and I want to give you the best material possible to help you succeed. So that's what I would tell my students. What I want to do with my teaching career outside of just be a good teacher is I want to be on the like active learning crusade. So I really think that professors should consider the active learning principles. You can start with baby steps, like even just having clicker questions or question and response moments in your class, or just taking a few minutes out of your lecture to have pose a discussion question in groups or something like that. You don't have to go immediately for the big, like, totally flipped structure where we like hardly lecture at all or whatever. If you're not comfortable with that, but we're really moving into a new era of education where the internet's been around long enough that students could learn so much of what you're saying in your lecture, regardless of your subject outside of class. And it's getting easier for people to cheat fake homework with AI.
Uh,
We're asking really big questions about what any work that we do even means in the AI age, right? I really think that the answer to all of these questions is making your in-class time as valuable as possible by doing the active learning stuff. We're really moving past the era, I think, where just talking at students is like the best way that we can have a relationship with them and get their money's worth out of their education. I really think like I'm going to be making my career out of convincing professors to try the active learning principles because you will also be very enriched by doing that instead of giving the same lectures year after year. You'll be very, I think, pleasantly surprised by how your class can surprise you and how it enriches your life if you're really getting the most out of your class time. Yeah.
mm.
I could go on. I
Yeah,
could
no,
keep going
I
on. Yeah.
like it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel like it's like what you just said, it'll benefit not only the students but the professors as well to
Yeah.
adopt or move towards this style because it's
Yeah.
no lose there. I mean, it's you have to sacrifice the comfort of what's familiar and what is
Hmm.
traditional, right? But other than
Yeah.
that, it's a win-win.
Yeah. Aren't we like other professors who do research? Aren't we innovators anyways?
Right.
There's the Active Learning Institute at UCI. We're really doing some really interesting stuff. And so why not be innovators inside your classroom as well as outside? Plus, then you don't have to talk for an hour and a half straight,
There you go.
several times a week.
Yeah. Unless I guess unless you love that.
Even as much as I love talking,
Yeah.
I'm enjoying spending 30 minutes of class talking instead of an hour and a half.
Right. No,
Yeah.
I feel that too. All
Yeah.
right. I think unless you have anything else, we can transition to the next topic or two different topics. Let's choose your own adventure in the spirit of video games. The first one is Burnout and Recovery, and the second one is your indie game. What do you want to go to first?
I think we should go into the burnout and recovery next because since we've been talking about my teaching career already, these are very intricately linked.
So my jumping off question is, could you walk us through this burnout and what caused it or led to it?
Yeah. I'm I'm gonna really be so honest and bare my soul because there's some things about this that are like embarrassing then and it's like it feels so my fault, but I also really hope that talking about it like helps some other artists who went through the same thing. When I was trying to make my indie studio a business, which I'm not trying to do anymore. Nowadays I'm just trying to make art. But when I was trying to make it a business and work full time, I hit a wall with like how much work I was doing constantly and with how not fulfilling that any of that was. that I really until a few months ago was like, I'm never going to work in the game industry again. And I don't even know if I want anything to do with games. Sometimes it's embarrassing to talk about. And this was so hard for me to deal with because in the industry, generally, when we think about like burnout in the game industry, it's your boss like working you too hard
Mm.
and you're crunching, which is what we call working ridiculously long hours, especially right before a game releases or something. And it being part of some like systemic thing that like somebody else did it to you. But I totally did this to myself with trying to work full time and make the indie game thing like happen as a business and centering my life way too much on my career. And what happened after that was like, there are just so many things that I was realizing simultaneously that I just really didn't want to do. I didn't want to be a full time programmer. I actually love programming. I just don't want to do it 40 hours a week. I think that's a very reasonable, very reasonable thing. Don't want making and selling a entertainment product to be my primary source of income. I don't want all my income to revolve around the monetary success of the art that I'm making. I don't want to be a business person. And unsurprisingly, starting a business is being a business person, even if that business is art, right? But what discovering all of this simultaneously led to was me just thinking that I just couldn't have anything to do with games at all because of that part that I told you where all of those things that also were not working for me simultaneously were the center of my life.
Mm.
Because my career was the center of my life at all times, even if I didn't want to admit that it was. My hobbies were gaming, my career was gaming, my free time was building my indie game studio. It was like way too much. I had to really believe for like over a year that I was going to try to transition away from video games totally. And even though I was teaching, I was like, maybe I do go get a PhD in something that's not video game related so that I can teach something that doesn't have to do with games and programming. But over the summer, like a couple of key things happened. And I think my love for games came back in a renewed way where I'm like, I actually want, first of all, the center of my career to be teaching and the center of my life to not be my career.
Mm.
And now that I have that figured out, my passion for it came back. And I'm like, oh, I can enjoy this again in a healthy way this time.
So then you realize that, well, so the career wise, you figured out it wasn't meant to be gaming, but actually teaching.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because teaching, it's still really hard work. And I spend more time than anybody's asking of me on my course design and my course materials and stuff. I could have just borrowed a previous professor's lectures and found some okay-ish textbook and just gone by that or whatever. But I'm really putting like a lot of time and heart into developing the class unique from scratch, exactly how I think it should be designed. So I'm spending a lot of time on that. But the important thing compared to what I was doing before is it is also very fulfilling. Like the work that I put into it really pays off. That what I was telling you earlier about my favorite part of it, where like seeing like the light bulb light up in a student's face when they figure something out, I'm getting back out of it as much as I put in.
One thing that came to mind, I recently heard this, but it's the concept of burnout, right? And from this source, it was saying that the reason why you get burnt out or like the mechanism behind that process is putting in a lot of effort and not getting the intended result that you want.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that recently. Okay, so the reason why people feel burned out is like they're putting so much effort, whether it be career or a relationship or something like that. And then the result isn't what they expected. And then that's the burnout because you're like, but then you realize that, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you're doing gaming, but you didn't get that sense of fulfillment or that sort of release at the end of that process. And that's probably why you're burned out. But then you get that in teaching when you see the light bulbs
Hmm.
click and you're like, okay, all this work was worth it. Is that kind of
Yeah.
similar?
Yeah, exactly. And it like part of me took a long time to realize that this was burnout because I hadn't accepted that exact definition of it you just gave. To me, burnout was just your boss made you work too hard and you're tired.
Right.
And that is also very real. That does happen in the game industry where people burn out because they're being made to work like ridiculous hours and they don't get to see their families and sleep enough and stuff, right?
Mm. Oh,
And
those
that also
unfortunate.
is yeah, is also bad. There is also another way to achieve burnout. That's exactly the process that you're talking about, where it's like you're putting a lot of work in and you're not getting like the fulfillment that you were expecting out of it. And it's not because you're not patient enough or because you're working too little or whatever, or too hard even. It's really because there's a huge mismatch here between the amount of work that you're putting in and whether or not the results that you are getting are like personally fulfilling for you. And I just don't get that from trying to make commercial art products. That just doesn't work for me. There's so many things there that may totally work for other people. There are a lot of people that genuinely really enjoy the biz dev, a business development side of running an indie studio. Not me. Not me though.
I like
Yeah.
it. Okay, so when it comes to now creating art, not as a career, so now you separated that. What is the fulfillment or the feeling that you get that you enjoy from creating art?
Yeah, it's really about communicating a feeling and then having somebody else understand it. The indie game that I'm building, it's about this really, it looks on the surface like it's about a boy band. It's about a fan. It is about a fan who has an unhealthy relationship with a boy band. I'm communicating this character's feelings and her arc like over this story. And when people get it, that is also very magical, which just it's nice when that gets to a giant audience, which is why we have those fantasies of building a huge company so that a million people play our games or whatever. But it doesn't really take, it's not always worth the biz dev to get there.
I
And
see.
it's really about like the big question that I'm asking myself now is like, what is the right balance, that effort to get it in front of an audience to have that satisfaction out of it.
Okay, so I'm curious now. You said it's when it gets to the point of, okay, the person playing my game, they get it. What are the
Uh,
feedback loops that allow you to know that people are getting it? And or
yeah.
is it sort of like a metrics thing where it's like, okay, this reached 100,000 people, or oh, like you said, is the biz dev worth it to get it to in front of a million people, right? But what is that feedback loop that allows you to feel that the player gets it?
Yeah. So for me, on a small scale, it is satisfying just to watch somebody play it and hear their like thoughts about it. And right before the school year started, I was running some like a public beta test for the first time, which is just not just making my friends or my partner play it or whatever, but like I've got like a small Discord server where I've got a bunch of people who are playing it and leaving feedback in the server. So we can move from like that scale to that scale. And then if you're asking me, how do I know when I'm satisfied based on how many people have played it? Or man, I don't know. Because that well is like endless. That well could be endless of which is something that I started to realize when I was trying to be like successful as an artist, right? Is I saw immediately that well of, oh, well, how much is enough to like how many people do I need to play it and tell me that it's good,
Uh-huh.
before that's like satisfying. And I'm like, ooh, kind of like scary question, right?
Okay, so then at the moment, it's like at the stage or the phase or the level that it's at, even just getting that feedback while it's in beta, and then maybe like when it gets to that next level, that is already in itself satisfying compared to, let's say, your old life of doing it as a career. Maybe you didn't
Yeah.
get that sort of feedback because you were working in a bigger company, but in this indie environment, you can get more of that. And then as you scale up, you'll probably feel more of it.
Yeah. So I guess, so if we're comparing this to the satisfaction of having a job as a programmer on a big team, the thing that's not satisfying about it is how far removed I think that you can feel from the thing that you're making. So, for example, it's really rare and it's a really magical and lucky moment when you get to work on a project that you would actually play if you weren't getting paid to.
Uh-huh.
I do think that the games that I worked on when I worked in the industry, I worked on a lot of mobile action strategy games for some reason, which I would never play those. I would never play those if I wasn't being paid to. They're games that satisfy somebody. Like I think that the one that I worked on at Blizzard's a great game for people who enjoy those types of games, but I'm just not one of those people. So there's just so many things like that that just create this alienation step, whether it's like a giant team or a boss that you don't like, or just not liking enjoying the skill that you're doing for 40 hours a week. I just don't enjoy programming 40 hours a week. There's all of these gaps between like you and the product, even if you get to see players like playing it and there's a million people playing it and they all love it or whatever. That certainly is also satisfying. But to me personally, these little gaps of satisfaction are just huge for me compared to Like, even just the satisfaction of having a dozen friends playing something that I designed the entire thing from scratch. All of the successes are mine, all of the mistakes are also mine, but that's all my project. This is something that I really wanted to see in the world. All of those gaps being closed is, like, very important to me personally.
I love it. All right. So far, you've given a lot of good insights on this. So now, just to wrap it up, do you have any general advice for other people who may be facing burnout and how to get out of it?
Yeah, so God, one of my friends who I haven't even seen in months sent me this one Instagram message one time when I was, like, complaining about this on my story, the burnout on my story, and I have not stopped thinking about it since. I was like, I don't know how to move on because I was so convinced at the time, like, I need to, like, move on to a new career. What I had specifically said, I had been complaining on my Instagram story, just, like, venting on my story as one does, about, like, how do I enjoy the idea of being excited about anything again? Because I was so deep in the pit. I was like, I don't know how to be excited about my old career. I don't know how to be excited about a new career. I used to be an incredibly, what's it called when you want a lot of ambitious person? I don't know how to be excited about being ambitious again, about, like, having dreams again. I wasn't feeling like any of that. And I was, like, venting about that on my story. Like, how do I ever feel any of that again? And they messaged me and were like, you won't again until you, like, actually fully accept that that you don't actually want that. And that was really interesting to me. And I really haven't stopped thinking about it. And it wasn't until the moment until I was like, I really have to accept that I'm never going to be ambitious in the same way as I used to be because all of my thoughts and feelings have changed about what that actually, like, means for me. Then things actually clicked. And then I also watched my partner play the Nathan Drake games, and I was like, "Oh, games can be fun." And then I remembered that games can be fun.
Yeah. The reason why people play games is because it's
Yeah,
fun.
I was like, "Oh, this is all supposed to be fun." Because that's not a genre of game that has anything to do with my personal interests,
Uh,
values, what I care about making in games, anything, but it was just fun. And I
yeah.
was like, "Oh, yeah, like, they can just be fun." So, my advice to people from everything that I learned from all of that, if you're dealing with burnout specifically, is first of all, you have to be able to call it what it is. Don't be so full of, like, shame about it that you won't even do things that you need to do to take care of yourself. If you need to take a break, if you need to not be working full time, if you need to take a break from your industry, if you need to take a break from an old image that you had of yourself, of the kind of ambition that you used to have or whatever, you really have to internalize that break, not just, oh, I'm going to go on vacation for a week or whatever. But it's like, you really have to let go of that, like, old identity before whatever the next step is you can actually be convinced that it's, like, real. I can't really tell people exactly how to get there, but you have to accept that that's where you need to go. And that needs to be, like, the next goal, kind of ironically, is, like, letting go of goals or whatever, because you really have to shut the old door before the next one opens. And that's, I don't know. I can't really tell people exactly how to get there, but
Starting
that's how I
point.
actually got through it. Yeah. And I also really had to admit that I was only not able to imagine myself ever making games again because I was burned out of it. I had to admit that before I was like, okay, maybe games aren't the enemy. Maybe just the burnout is the problem. And so now I'm actually really excited about even the next game that I'm going to make after this. And I started getting excited about that again. And I was like, maybe I can just accept that the thing that I went through is burnout. And I'm going to approach my career in a whole new way from now on.
I love it. Cool. Awesome. Well, on the topic of making games, we can now transition to the last one. All right. So, last one, indie game studio, Tilia. Are we good? Well, I guess we can take this anywhere you want, but I wanted to ask about this project that you're working on. I think, is it launched or is it still in beta or?
No, we're still testing
Okay.
it.
Okay. Gotcha.
So you can join the group of testers and play it till to the end for free right now. There's only a little bit of content that's missing and then lots of bug fixes between now and the full version. But yeah, if you can play it for free right now if you send us a little report about bugs and stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Cool. So, could you walk us through how this whole thing started?
Yeah. So I've always been obsessed with games that are set on digital interfaces. So a game that's set on somebody's computer or set on somebody's phone or whatever. And I wanted to make one of those. Originally, back in 2018, I was playing Mystic Messenger. Are you familiar with Mystic
I'm
Messenger?
not.
It is it's an anime dating sim
Okay, okay.
that takes place on a phone where you're like you have this like mysterious app on your phone and there's 5 beautiful boys on it
Ah, okay, okay.
who you're like talking to. And I originally was like, okay, I want to do this, but I want to make it take place over several different apps, like a bunch of different social media and stuff, in addition to the messaging app. And so I was originally going to make a dating sim that was set on a phone, but I pivoted away from that and I was like, okay, I just want to make a regular like drama narratively, but also still set like on a phone. And so the whole thing's been my project, my like conception from the start. I really wanted to make something like that. And I made actually the dating sim version of it originally. I made a game jam project, which is when you make a game in like a short period of time, like a few days or a couple of weeks or something. So me and some friends made a game over like the course of 2 weeks. That's exactly that concept of a dating sim that takes place over like social media and messaging app. And we put it on the internet for free. And last I checked, which was like 6 months ago or something, 42,000 people had played it, even though we had absolutely no marketing scheme or like anything like that. So I was like, okay, I think that the interest of people who want to play narrative games on a phone, like, I think that that interest overlap is like pretty big.
Wait, really quick, how did they find the game then?
It was on itch.io, which is basically just like a website version of Steam where
Okay,
people
okay.
can upload anything that they want. So it's a big hub for indie projects like ours for people to just discover weird news stuff that's nobody's talking about, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So people were literally searching, and our game was like a little bit K-pop themed. So we put it under like the K-pop like category, and it was like number one in the K-pop category for
Wow.
like a couple of weeks. So people who were just looking for something that had anything to do with K-pop or dating sims or for free on their phone or whatever found our project through that website. Yeah.
Dope. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So then you said it. So how does that transition over to the current game?
Yeah, so I started working on it with a good friend of mine who was writing it while I'm programming it and like doing the photography and stuff. Because another major interesting point of the game is that all the art in it is like real photography, not illustration, which is both a personal interest for me because I mentioned earlier, I
Right.
like face to face time with people. That's part of why I'm a professor and not a programmer. And so that gives me like studio time with people.
And you're a photographer.
Yeah, yeah. And I do photography as a hobby.
That's dope.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. And so it was a interest of mine. And I think that it helps give this like very real social media feeling to it. And we went through a couple of iterations on the story and landed on this like boy band mystery thing. Cause we were like going back to that game that a bunch of people played on itch.io just because they were looking for the K-pop tag. We were like, okay, people who like narrative games, people who are playing games on their phone, and people who like K-pop and the
Mhm.
whole boy band thing, big overlap. Lots of big I'm trying to make a Venn diagram here. Lots of overlapping interests here. That's perfect. I really think that people will enjoy this. There's a big audience who's really going to enjoy this. And obviously huge interest overlaps for me too because for any listeners who don't know, JR and I met because I was taking his like K-pop dance classes. So like perfect alignment between something that I want to make and something that I think people also want to play. So and there's this perfect fit between what can we actually what story can we actually tell that happens over the internet? And it really has to be a story about the internet because if there's no in-person component, there's no sequences where you get off your phone, the whole game is like taking place on a phone over simulated these little fake social media apps and messaging app and stuff. So what kind of story can we tell that is really only taking place on the internet? It really has to be about the internet. And something that's about the internet and K-pop. That's why I half jokingly, but also earnestly call it a boy band stalking sim because this is about you trying to solve a mystery about a boy band
Mhm.
through increasingly sketchy means on the internet. Yeah. And I'm like, I love it so much. I think that it was very fascinating and fun for me to build. And I hope that it's equally fascinating and fun for people to play.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. I like the whole stalking, cross out, sleuthing. Like, oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah. You're mentioning like the website.
Yeah.
The way that I wrote the marketing text for the website or whatever is, yeah, you're stalking and then that's crossed out and then sleuthing
Yeah.
like clues. Yeah. Cause there's supposed to be that kind of sketchy feel to it. It's
Mhm,
not,
mhm.
it is at the end of the day an indie game written by pretentious indie people who love analyzing games and movies and stuff. And so it's supposed to be a little interesting
I
on
like
top
it.
of the just fun K-pop stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so now thanks for sharing like the vision and how it all came together and the
Yeah.
concept of it. So now next I want to ask like how does one approach making a game like this? Again, I'm an outsider. I don't know the first thing about making a game, but how does from a high level perspective, how does one approach like the whole process of it?
Yeah. So you've got a bunch of people with totally different skill sets. And then you have to have somebody to bring them all together and make it all come together somehow, who is me. So these always start like if you are interested in making an indie game, you basically have to start with having somebody who's going to decide what's actually like in the game, like what the game is, and somebody who can code it. Like those are the two skill sets that you basically can't go without, like somebody who's going to build it, even if they're not using code, even if they're using like, we've got some code free ways of putting the game logic together. You've
Mm,
got somebody who's got to build it and somebody who's got to decide what it is. Sometimes those are one person, which was me in this case. And then you also need people like for all the different skill sets of all the other stuff that's going to go in the game. And so like, I started by just programming it and prototyping how the, like, messaging app dialogue was gonna work and what the other apps were gonna look like, and I slowly just brought in other people to help contribute to it with me. And when you're making an indie game, the biggest question that you have to ask is how much money do I have and how much am I gonna pay people to, like, work on it with me, right? And so, the biggest skill that I was lacking that I absolutely could not do by myself was the writing, because I have experience with obviously the photography, the programming, and I figured I'd just wing it with the design because that's what everybody does. I have a little bit of design knowledge, a lot more now that I've
yeah,
built
yeah.
it. But I knew that I could not do good writing like by myself. And my partner at the time was really interested in pivoting from working in film to maybe getting into the game industry. So we were like, well, this is perfect. You can like work on it with me and we'll leverage that for helping you get into the game industry. And then also I have a writer on my game. So
Mm,
in the film industry, they call it trade for trade when you're
mm.
not paying somebody. So you have to figure out like, how much money do I have to pay people? How much can I raise? Do I want to make a business out of it? And who will work on it with me for free? Those are the big like things that you have to figure out. Yeah.
Okay, so
Does that
if
answer your question?
it does, I have a follow-up
Yeah.
question now. So
Cool.
budgets and how much you want to put into it, it's a consideration for almost every industry, right? Or pretty much every industry.
Yeah.
So and then you mentioned trade for trade. So then how does one, I don't know, leverage, trade, negotiate, or bring on talent and then figuring that out? I'm asking for a friend slash myself.
Yes. Yeah. So the key to that is that you need to be like working in the industry with people and like building up like trust and relationships with them. So, for example, the person who's doing the music on our project, Lucian, I know him because he worked on all of those game jam projects. So game jams are always something that people work on for free. Nobody gets paid to do that. That's always for fun, for practice, for awards, whatever. But it's really short term. That's why people do it for free because it's like just a weekend or whatever. And so every single game jam project that I did, he worked on, and I met him through a mutual friend who like brought him on to do those game jam projects with us. Everybody else that I know who's made any indie game that was, like, ever finished, any of their relationships that were people who were, like, doing stuff for free, they had done some kind of previous work with them so that they had already been building up that trust and knowing, "Oh, I know that I can work with you." The people who I did the original demo of the game with, because we actually wrote a third of the story and then scrapped it for, like, the new version.
Mm.
The people who were the models for that one for the photos, I basically just offered them free headshots in return for doing their shoots with us. And so the shoot that I did with them, we took their headshots and we took photos for me. So that's our like trade for trade, right? So yeah, you always need to be like offering something, whether it's that you have that pre-established relationship or you have something else to offer them. Or also sometimes models and actors will just do things for free just because they think your project is interesting and they want it in their portfolio, which is originally how I got the models to work on iced coffee. which is sorry, iced coffee, that was like the name of the project before we had the actual title for it. That was like our secret project title or whatever, our
Oh,
like
I see.
working title.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, so iced coffee is the
So
same thing as this one.
yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
are
yeah,
we
yeah.
good? Yeah.
Yeah. We were calling it Project Iced Coffee when we were like pitching it before we had a final title for it. The actors for that were doing it just to work on something interesting. But when I landed the grant from Netflix, I actually used that money to pay them.
Oh, I see.
So yeah. So they did get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, I
They
get
did get paid eventually, but they agreed to do it for no pay. But then I decided to pay them because I was like, well, now I actually have the money for it. So this is, I think, a great use of my budget.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that answers my question because I guess some context. So I want to do some creative projects in the future, specifically
Yeah.
to create some like a film with a friend of mine who also does
Huh.
filmmaking. And so I was just wrapping my hand around it. As someone who's never done that before, it's like, okay, it's a creative project. Obviously, we're not trying to make it a business. It's more of an artistic sort of thing. And then how I would bring on or approach that situation of we need to get talent and we don't really have funding and it's more of just this sort of fun thing to do. But that makes a lot of sense. It's like figuring out your networks and what you can offer them and figuring out what
Hmm.
works for both of you. And then if you do get funding, then you can disperse that or whatever.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. You just kind of always have to have something to offer people. It's weird, but also good at the same time because I know some people might be like, what do you mean you weren't going to pay your actors? It's weird, but also good at the same time that people will work on projects for free because anybody who doesn't have that access to like connection, like big connections, big money, family money, whatever, to get their projects done. The only way that people get projects done or get experience if they don't like, especially their first thing, if they don't have that like born into access to capital is by like working with other people. But then I still hope that I'm offering people something. It's like an opportunity to work on something that you think is interesting and do the thing that you love, working in an environment that's actually supportive. So a lot of my cast and crew told me that our set had like great vibes or reminded them about what they love about working on set and stuff like that. And that's because I put a lot of effort into being like, this is a diverse cast. We're going to treat each other well. We're going to have reasonable hours, stuff like that. So I hope that I'm also offering, hey, let's do what we love and get stuff under our belt and get projects under our belt and support each other. And then also be a good environment and get to do something that we love before we have nasty bosses who are paying us and get to take advantage of our good hearts or whatever.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, next question I have is biggest challenges with this project and
Uh
or the
huh.
best parts. Maybe some of that is inherent, but I'm just curious.
Biggest challenges. Really, my first biggest challenge was, like, exactly what you asked, which is, like, how do I get all this stuff done that I can't do, that I need other people for, the writing, the modeling, the stuff like that, without a lot of money? That was challenge number 1, which is part of where that grant really came in clutch because that was absolutely necessary to get the UI done. So, the user interface, for those of you who aren't familiar, that's just anytime that you're using any software, the buttons, the windows,
What you
the
see.
the fonts, everything, all of those decisions, huge for our game because our game's just apps. Everything in our game is just apps. I had to have somebody design those. I'm terrible at user interface design. That was something that we used the budget on. The models, the sets, the lights, the props, the everything. Just money for everything was like a big thing. And so that grant was a huge part in enabling like all of that. The second question is, how do we make it good with the limited budget that we have and the limited time? Because this is not my full-time job and I don't want to do it for the rest of my life. So, how many times are we going to iterate on this? How many times are we going to scrap stuff and test it and redo and fix stuff with the limited amount of time and resources that we have? That's the other giant question that anybody making indie anything, but especially like movies and games have to ask like how much iteration can we possibly go through? And so the people who are helping us test right now and fix all those bugs and stuff, hugely helpful because me as the programmer who's been staring at this project for like years and years, I'm not going to catch all the bugs that somebody else does. So that's really important. And then question number 3 is how do we get anybody to play it?
Hmm.
Even after it's done and it's good, which I think that it's definitely good and mostly done. We got a couple bugs left to fix. How do we get it in front of anybody? And I have not solved that issue yet because the answer to that was supposed to be get a big budget so that we can do a big like marketing
I see.
campaign. Simply do not have the money for that. So it's okay. Now I got to figure out, am I going to leverage TikTok? I don't know. Oh man, what am I going to do to like actually get this in front of people? Those are the big challenges.
So challenges, the other side of that was like best parts. I don't know to make this. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the audience can already sense your enthusiasm about what you do and all the fun side of it. But
Yeah.
just to wrap it up, are there any parts that you want to throw out there that stand out to you?
Yeah, best parts, like, the sets that we had, like, working with all the actors, oh my god, so, working with actors was like, basically any human interaction is my favorite part of working on anything. Working with actors was so, like, eye-opening to me that I really wanna, like, work with actors again. We had an interesting, weird circumstance where we just needed photos, so we brought on people that were actors, that were models, that were all kinds of, like, in between, that had just any kind of experience in front of a camera, basically. One of our actors, like, what he does for a living is, like, scare acting, and he does,
Uh,
like, stunts and stuff and, like, scare acting, which is super, super cool. We had all of these different people on the project, and actors' whole job, which is something I learned through doing this project, is to get excited about a project, figure out what's interesting about it, and then really dig into the character and stuff. So we provided a huge opportunity for them to do the first two things, but because we're not doing any video, so they're just posing. What I really want to do with the next one, which I'm going to do video for, which I'm very excited about, is really dig into that last one of like actually like letting them dig into the character and then actually do some directing. So that was really fun and really inspirational, and actors just they're such, like, interesting people. Their job is so fascinating, and
uh,
working with them is so much fun. The other best part is just putting it in front of people and those moments that I talked about earlier where it's like, somebody talks about their interpretation of the game, and either they get it, they get exactly what I was trying to put out, or they bring their own thoughts or feelings about it, and they say something that you didn't even think about, could be a message or an aspect of that character or something, that's so magical. Like, when people bring something that you didn't even think about as the person who designed the game into, like, their personal interpretation of it, that's so cool. Yeah, very ironic, video game developer, you think of somebody who just, like, sits at the computer all day, but my favorite aspect is always any part of my job is those, like, human
I
interactions,
like
so,
it. Yeah. And I
yeah.
think that's the best part about art in general is that you can always have an intention for an art, but art is
Yeah,
meant to be reinterpreted and consumed and it affects
yeah.
people in ways you don't even expect. And that is kind of like one of the best parts of creating art, right? It's like I never knew or saw that way, or wow, it affected you this way. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. No, totally, and I've definitely had people, like, say things to me about it and then been like, "Oh, that's great. I should add another, like,
Uh,
post or message or something that supports, like, that kind of line of thinking because that's fascinating,
yeah,
actually."
because it's like an
Yeah,
evolving art at that point because you're getting feedback
yeah,
from people who are in it and
yeah,
experiencing it, and then now you can make it better.
yeah. That's the most magical thing about, like, making games too, as opposed to any other medium is the interactivity is so core to it. That's what makes it stand out from the definition of it from any other medium is, like, the interactivity. And so the iteration part of it, like seeing how somebody responds to it and then changing it based on those responses is, I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about it. Like, very magical. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Last question I have just now to take a step back. Advice for people who want to make an indie game or get to the point where you're at. Do you have any general advice for them?
Yeah. I think continuing to follow up about what we were talking about earlier about like, how does anything get done? I really just want to reiterate that, like, the relationships that you make as an artist with other people that are working in that same medium that are at like your level of experience or level of like success or whatever, those are the most, like, invaluable people to you. When we think of the word, like, networking, I feel like for some reason, what we imagine is making a connection with somebody who's, like, way above you, some, like, boss or whatever, and then them giving you a job
Mhm.
later. Oh, that's not what's important. The important thing is making connections with people who you genuinely think that what they are making is, like, good or interesting, and being like, "Let's make good and interesting things together." If you are a student, the most important thing that you can do is make connections with other students so that you can make projects with them that go in your portfolio. And so that when you graduate, you have people in your network all over the industry who can tell you like whether or not the bosses suck. You can be like, yeah, this manager is nice. Oh, this manager is treating me like shit or whatever. And then you can talk to each other, right? Like that to me, those kind of networks. And then if you want to make something indie, then, you have friends that you went through school with, or you worked with, or you did game jams with, or all of those things. And then you're like, yeah, I think the art that your illustration is really cool, or I think you're a really talented programmer, or I love the music that you make, or whatever. And then you'll end up like working on your indie projects together because you just genuinely like each other's work. That's so much more valuable, especially when you were getting started out, than money, connections, whatever. That's the foundation of everything. Those other things definitely help you achieve big projects, but you can't even get started if you don't have those relationships.
That's a great takeaway. Okay, is there anything else we missed on this topic before we land the plane for the entire interview?
I think we got it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's solid. I'm endlessly fascinated and
Good.
I enjoy hearing you. I want to say yap, but for me, it's more profound than just yapping. I'm like, oh, this is so
Yeah,
interesting. And you're a great communicator. So I appreciate that.
thanks. Well,
Cool.
that's my profession, is professional yapping.
There you
As
go.
much as I'm like, oh, I don't lecture or
Yeah, yeah,
whatever, they still hired me technically to be a professional yapper. So
right.
I hope that,
That is my job
it's
title.
paying off. Yeah.
Perfect. I like it. Okay, cool. All right, let's wrap it up then. We'll go into ending questions. So, Travis, what are you grateful for?
I'm so grateful for my partner right now. My partner's in grad school, totally different program, but in the same school that I teach at. And we are like each other's like lifeline right now for making everything work. We're such a good team with like trading off like making dinner and our chores and our life and like making everything work. And I'm so grateful for that, because everything that we're both like achieving right now, like I don't doing this solo, maybe I could do it, but it would suck
Uh,
without them. It would be so much harder. Yeah, I'm very grateful for my partner.
I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, any final ask from the audience or any final takeaways you'd like them to have from this conversation?
Yeah. If you're a professor, lecture less. Please. Oh my God. I'm going to make a whole career out of campaigning for professors to lecture less and do more in class activities. If the stuff about burnout resonated with you at all, the key is to be less hard on yourself. So if any of that resonated with you at all, like really, you can give yourself permission to take a step back and ask some inward questions about what's going on. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I really did not. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know, like, genuinely, I told you how I was not enjoying anything. I couldn't imagine anything ambitious for my future at all. But now I got through it. So I really believe that other people can too. So if that was resonating with you, definitely take a step back and think about it a little bit. And if you're a student, please come to office hours.
Yeah,
I want to talk to you guys. I've always got a gaggle of students in there all the time, but there's always room for more.
I love
Yeah.
it. Cool. Nice. I love that message of hope and open doors.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Final question is where can we
Yeah.
find you, Travis, if people want to see what you're up to or check out what you're doing or connect with you?
Yeah. I'm going to plug the games website first, which is studiotiliagames.com. That's where you can go see like the projects that I'm talking about. Even if you're just curious and you want to go see, I made some really cool key art for it. Please just go look at the art. It's the photos that I made. They're super, super cool. And then if you think it's really intriguing, maybe play it for free for now while you can and leave us a little bit of feedback. I want to hear your opinions. If you want to follow me on social media, that I'm out of mana on Blue Sky and Instagram are the two best places to find me. I'm sure JR will link the exact spellings and whatnot of those. And please check out the game.
Yeah,
Like I
definitely.
said, I just want people to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My hope is that this whole interview is like a huge pitch that they can feel the
Yeah.
enthusiasm. And even if they're just a little
Yeah.
bit curious, they can just go to our website, click on it, play it out, and see how they like it.
And if you're a big game publisher and you got a lot of money, pretend like I didn't say anything about not wanting to do biz dev. Never mind. I'm selling out. Come give me your money. I'll make an incredible project and I'll make you millions of
There you
dollars.
go. Yeah, we love
Yeah.
that. Perfect. All right, cool. I will wrap up now. So thank you again, Travis, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Thoroughly enjoyed this. I'll be listening to this multiple times. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And so I'll do my final sign off to the audience. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all that cool, fun stuff. Leave Travis love in the comments below as well. And leave us our show wherever you're listening to this 5 stars. So please do that. It helps with the show discoverability, etc. But a reminder to always be kind to other people, especially yourself. And remember that you can always learn something from someone if you take the time to listen. So thank you guys for being here.
Awesome.